Hello and welcome to round 4 of 2017 U.S. Nationals. Maria Bartholdi in the booth alongside Jacob Van Lunen. There is Eric Froehlich on the left side of your screen and Seth Manfield on the right. Both players currently sitting undefeated at 3-0. Seth Manfield on Temur, of course. We saw this earlier, and it looks to be Eric Froehlich on the same thing, kicking things off with an Attune with Ether.
Looking through his deck there, also on Temur Energy. We just watched Seth win the round before. Game 3, he was able to apply a lot of early pressure with Long Tusk Cub, as we're seeing here, and Servant of the Conduit, and then he protected his threats with a very key negate on a specific turn and was able to sneak through a win in just 5 turns of action in Game 3 against his last opponent.
And Long Tusk Cub, one of the absolutely most critical cards for the Temur Energy deck. We named it our card of the day twice at the World Championship. It's just a 2/2 for 2.
Yeah, there's so many decks in Standard right now where they say, oh, I've got a good matchup against Temur Energy unless they have a turn 2 Long Tusk Cub. And you hear that time and time again from great players. So
Harness Lightning is going to deal with the Cub there from Eric Froehlich. Rogue Refiner is a play for Seth. Pass the turn back over to Froehlich. Yeah, and in case you're wondering, Seth Manfield does have a Carnage Tyrant in the main.
Ooh.
A single one of Carney T and one in the sideboard as well.
a lot of interesting cards here in the main deck from Seth. A single copy of Supreme Will in the main deck as well.
Interesting. Eric Froehlich is going to match things up there with his own copy of Rogue Refiner. And why would you think Seth would include something like Supreme Will in his main?
I think he probably is thinking that a lot of the time where he's planning on double spelling, his second spell can cost 3, and that's okay. And, considering that people kind of know about Essence Scatter at this point, there's a lot of situations where your opponent's just going to pass the turn back and punish you for leaving mana untapped. And when they do that and you have Supreme Will in your hand, you can just take advantage and sculpt your hand a little bit more.
Magma Spray is going to deal with Froehlich's Rogue Refiner, allowing Seth's to get in for 3. Dropping Froehlich down to 17, and here's a Bristling Hydra from Froehlich.
Yeah, Eric probably doesn't know how safe that is. Seth only with 1 copy of Essence Scatter in his deck.
Oh, really? I was going to say, I would be afraid in his position to cast it there, but...
Eric's more interesting stuff in his deck, actually. He's playing multiple copies of Confiscation Coup in the main.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Confiscation Coup, of course, a card we saw mainly out of the sideboard, dealing with things like Scarab God.
The fact that it can deal with Scarab God is just so good.
Froehlich swinging in with the Bristling Hydra. 8 energy available.
This is a tough spot to be in for Seth because, 8 energy is a lot, and you can go for the double block, but, you risk Eric spending 1 mana on a removal spell like Magma Spray and just putting yourself in a really, really bad position. Even if Eric has a 2 mana instant speed spot removal spell, you're still not happy with this situation if you end up double blocking. But if you're just taking the damage here, you're setting yourself up for a race that's really hard to win.
Looks like Seth is going to accept the damage there.
And in a lot of ways, you have to.
Yeah. Another Bristling Hydra from Froehlich is the follow-up play. Seth falls to 16. Yeah, any kind of double block there met with any sort of removal from Froehlich is a pretty big blowout there for Seth.
Yeah, and as a result, he knows that he's not able to block. Ooh.
Oh, and here he is! Carnage Tyrant hits the battlefield for Seth Manfield. Only a single mountain up for Froehlich. And there's a Magma Spray to deal with one of the Rogue Refiners at the end of Seth's turn. Passes back to Froehlich.
At least lets Seth know that he made the right play not making the double block on the turn prior. While the Carnage Tyrant is a 7/6 right now, Eric could trade with it with either of these Hydras simply by using 6 energy to make it have 6 power.
Yeah, Froehlich no fear, is just going to swing in with both of those bristling hydras.
And Seth, he may just have to trade off this Carnage Tyrant for a Bristling Hydra and a bunch of energy, which isn't ideal for a card like Carnage Tyrant. Then again, Carnage Tyrant, this isn't really the matchup that you're putting it in your deck for.
Best in a control match.
Absolutely. It really shines against the blue-black Grixis decks. And it's also quite good against the token strategies we've been seeing more of this week.
Seth will jump in front of a Bristling Hydra here. And Eric, happy to make that trade. Getting in for another 4. Following things up with another Rogue Refiner, which finds an Attune with Ether. Yeah, and that will be the only Carnage Tyrant we see in this game, as there's only one in Seth's main.
Likely the only one in the match. I don't imagine it's going to remain in his deck.
Yeah, it doesn't seem great. That's true. R.I.P. Carney T. Froehlich will attune here and play Long Tusk Cub, passing back. Notably a Confiscation Coup in his hand as well.
Yeah, Seth falling really far behind here. The fact that he's behind on board and he doesn't know, but we know his opponent has Confiscation Coup in hand. It's going to be really hard for Seth to find his way back into this game.
Froehlich's assembled a pretty formidable board presence with 8 energy at the ready as well to protect that Bristling Hydra or grow the cub.
Yeah, Seth does not have anything like Hour of Devastation in his deck. Even if he did, the Long Tusk Cub could live through it. Ugh.
And there it is, Confiscation Coup on the Rogue Refiner. Froehlich looking to slam the door here on Manfield. Supreme Will counter that order. If you're Froehlich, are you fine with that?
I'm absolutely fine with that. He's far enough ahead on board and has enough energy to make the Cub and Bristling Hydra terrifying threats, and Seth's life total is dwindling. The fact that Seth didn't play a card on his turn before means that he likely doesn't have anything to affect the board. He only has reactive cards, and reactive cards do not match up well against this Cub or this Hydra.
And there you see Eric Froehlich swinging in with the team. Manfield 3-mana open, Rogue Refiner, deciding whether or not it wants to jump in front of any of these creatures.
Yeah, he knows he can get a trade with the other Rogue Refiner, but that leaves the 2 most potent threats on the battlefield. If he has some sort of spot removal spell, he might be looking to make a play in response to Eric using some amount of energy, but with 7 energy on the other side of the table, there's no way he could have enough spot removal to get the Hydra off the table.
Harness Lightning here from Manfield, targeting the Long Tusk Cub. The Cub will go down. And Rogue Refiner will block Rogue Refiner. We're going to see Bristling Hydra gain a counter. So Froehlich will hit for 5 and throws it back over to Manfield. Yeah, I spoke to Eric before this tournament, and I said, "Ooh, what deck are you playing? What deck are you playing?" And he's like, "Temur." Come on, Eric.
I like that, though. I want somebody like Eric Froehlich to give themselves the best chance of winning, and if he felt that this was the best deck, then I definitely trust his judgment.
Ooh, Glory Bringer off the top there for Froehlich.
Wow, that's a nice one. Nice. It is scary, though, because your opponent didn't play anything on their turn. You have to expect they have some amount of reactive cards in their hand.
And there it is. Glory Bringer, does it resolve? Essence Scatter here from Seth.
The one Essence Scatter in his deck.
In comes the Hydra. Seth hanging on by a thread here at 2 life.
And he perhaps could find a way to victory here if he's able to plus this Chandra into... Oh, maybe he has a spell removal spell here.
Harness Lightning.
Wow.
Manfield has managed to clear Froehlich's board here thanks to Chandra, Torch of Defiance.
And I believe Eric is out of...
Is he living off the top of his deck now?
I believe so. And, that using that 3 energy to get through an extra point of damage may have been a crucial error here on Eric Froehlich's part.
There we see Chandra revealing that Attune.
And Seth had plus Chandra and revealed an Attune in his last match and ended up getting a bit punished for it in the later turns of the game. This game not going to make that same decision. Of course, this game it's a little more obvious that he should go ahead and use the Attune.
Yeah. Yeah, Planeswalker on an empty board. Usually a pretty good sign for whoever has it.
Yeah, the Planeswalker, Seth can be confident it's pretty safe considering its loyalty matches his life total. I don't think anybody's going to be thinking about it.
I'll attack your Chandra. Well, okay.
I thank you, my good man.
All right, a cycle here for Manfield.
Notice that Seth used that cycle on his main phase in case he finds a creature that he wants to play on this turn.
Just an island there is a draw for Froehlich. Passes it back. Wow, this... You can see just how powerful this card is, able to just potentially swing the game back completely in the other direction. Another Attune here for Seth.
Yeah, playing that Attune before activating his Chandra to minimize the chances that he's going to draw that land out of his deck.
Eric's still at 17.
And Eric's deck does feature haste creatures like Glorybringer. Could win the game out of nowhere, drawing a card off the top.
Oh, speaking of Glorybringer, how about that reveal from Seth Manfield? Glorybringer of his own is going to be cast. And in it swings. Back over to Froehlich, who is looking for something. Is that a confiscation coup? It is!
Wow.
Confiscation coup targeting that Glorybringer.
And that could be a way for him to deal with both the Glorybringer and the Chandra if Seth is forced to minus that Chandra to get the Glorybringer off the table.
Back on Seth. Chandra at 3. This is a close one.
Yeah, this is a really close game here.
What are you inclined to do if you're in Manfield's seat?
Well, I think that if you don't have a removal spell for the Glorybringer, you're essentially forced to use the Chandra to get it off the table. But then you're really, left to your own devices with what's in your hand. And, from the looks of it, Seth does not have much action in his hand. If he does, it's reactive. And, you don't necessarily want to be playing reactive cards when you're at 2 life. It puts you in a really dangerous situation. So he pluses that Chandra, and that leads me to believe that Seth likely has another answer to this Glorybringer in his hand.
Reveals another Attune off of Chandra.
Are there basic lands remaining in Seth's deck?
He's going to take a peek. He finds a forest.
Eric, definitely frustrated that the forest was not in Seth's hand. Let's see what Seth has to deal with this Glorybringer.
Yeah, Seth plays his cards pretty close to his vest. Hard to get a look at his hand.
Ooh, is it another Glorybringer? Because that would be ideal.
And it is! Another Glorybringer hits the table for Seth Manfield and throws it back over to Froehlich.
Yeah, now, interesting here that he chooses not to attack with that Glorybringer.
Eric's just got a couple of forests in hand.
Oh, well, of course, he cannot kill a dragon with the Glorybringer, so he has
dragon
to...
can't
He
get a
has to
dragon.
block, yeah. It's that text on Glorybringer that comes up way more often than I would think it does. Lost a game or two on Magic Online trying to click on my opponent's Glorybringers.
No, they're loyal. They're loyal.
Would never dare hurt another dragon.
Just a land off that reveal for Chandra for Seth. Attuned with Ether is what Froehlich found this turn.
Both of them just playing off the top with Seth with that Planeswalker in play obviously is a huge advantage here. Of course, Eric has Seth down to 2, so that means a lot of the cards on the top of his deck are...
They're all live.
Very dangerous.
Servant of the Conduit revealed this turn for Seth will get cast. Throws it back over to Eric. I think that was a Whirler Virtuoso.
Be a reasonable card, to be sure.
And there it is. And he still has an Attune with Ether in hand as well as a way to make some more energy.
Yeah, only making 2 more, though, not that crucial 3 that he would need to make the 2 1/1 flyers that would present a lethal air force here.
Harnessed Lightning.
And notice how Seth chooses to cast the Harness Lightning in response to the trigger where Whirl of Virtuoso would create energy that prevents Eric from using the activated ability on Whirl of Virtuoso to make the 1/1 flyers that would be so crucial here with Seth at just 2 life.
Seth will plus Chandra once again, bumping up to 7, revealing a Rogue Refiner that will hit the table.
Yeah, Seth now with 15 energy too, so
Jeez.
a Whirl of Virtuoso of his own would be just about game over.
Servant swings in, drops Froehlich down to 9. Another tune for Manfield as he continues to thin his deck. Passes back over to Froehlich. What can he find to deal 2 damage to Seth?
And Essence Scatter off the top. A card that is just about the best card you could find when you're ahead on the board, but
Yeah.
when you're behind, it's not what you're looking for at all.
Yeah, Froehlich's just going to have to pass turn back over to Seth as he watches this Chandra slowly take the advantage that he had worked up earlier this game away from him. Long Tusk Cub is the reveal off the Chandra's plus this turn. Will enter play here for Seth, who'll be able to swing for 5.
Yeah, the door isn't quite shut yet, but at this point, Eric has
One more turn.
and needs to draw a Glorybringer.
It is a Long Tusk Cub. Yep, so Eric Froehlich will scoop them up. Seth Manfield taking down the first game of this match here in round 4.
Yeah, and that game did not look good for Seth at all.
No, it did not.
Yeah, Seth was facing off against a pair of Bristling Hydras and had essentially no board of his own, just a Rogue Refiner. And, you know, to us, it looked as if Eric Froehlich had all but won the game.
All right, let's take a look in here at Brad Nelson versus Zach Owen. Temur Energy versus White Blue Approach. Interesting. We haven't seen this match on camera yet today.
And this is a deck I expect to see quite a bit of this weekend, actually. When, you know, you have a tournament on the East Coast like this, players in the Northeast love a deck like Blue-White Approach. That's right up their alley. Last night at dinner, Brian talked at length about this, and I can't help but agree.
Isn't it funny? Do you think that different parts of the country you kind of see Magic players sort of leaning towards certain kinds of decks?
Absolutely. Definitely.
Okay, so I'm from Minnesota, Midwest. What do the people in the Midwest love, JVL?
Mid-range green decks. You're about that life. Don't lie to me. We're to stereotype you guys.
Mid-range green. All right. That's fine. It's not me personally, but
No,
I'll take the generalization.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing, you know. Like, you guys are like birthing pod people. It's a compliment.
I come from the birthing pod people. White Blue Approach, a deck that kind of made a splash, a little tiny mini splash at GP Minneapolis earlier this year.
And White Blue Approach seems like a pretty good choice for this weekend. You have to like your matchups against Temur, and if you build your deck in a certain way against Red, and against the control decks, they have like half their deck is dead cards against you. That's got to be a nice thing to experience. One of the big problems with a deck like that is that, you know, your opponent might play a card like Lost Legacy and remove all the Approach of the Second Sons from your deck, but post-board, a lot of these blue-white Approach decks are splashing black for Scarab God in games 2 and 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a pretty smart move. Brad here swinging in with this long tusk cub. We're going to see Hieroglyphic Illumination finding a cast out for Zach. And Brad will pass the turn back. Yeah, Approach is always a deck you have to definitely be on your toes when you play against. Trying to come out of the gates as fast as you possibly can when you're dealing with stuff like Settle the Wreckage, Fumigate, and then finally when Approach gets cast, I'm just gaining 7 life.
Yeah, and, you know, these cards like Settle the Wreckage and these big haymakers that the blue-white Approach deck plays aren't quite as strong as they would be against these mid-range aggressive decks as they might be in other formats, because these mid-range aggressive decks have access to so much counter magic in post-board games. So Brad's deck likely has a bunch of negates and Supreme Wills and the like in it in these post-board matches. And he can attack with everything, and if Zach decides he's going to tap out and go for Settle the Wreckage, Brad can really punish him with a card like Negate.
Zach will just pass the turn back over to Brad. Players currently tied up at 1 game apiece. Zach Owen from Atlanta. This is his first ever feature match.
I like his deck choice a lot here. I think Search for Azcanta also, is very good in a ton of different strategies, but I think it might be at its very best in the blue-white Approach
Oh, really?
decks.
Why is that?
The fact that it digs you to find the Approach again is very good, and
Right.
the fact that you're all reactive cards means that, you know, finding those specific cards for specific threats on the other side of the table is, you know, of utmost importance.
Yeah, if your opponent can find their Approach before they're supposed to find their Approach, thanks to cards like Search for Azcanta, it's just so bad. Here we see Brad Nelson's creatures getting into the red zone. Deathgorge Scavenger here is going to eat something up from Zach Owen's graveyard. Can't quite see if it was a creature or non-creature. We're going to see this long tusk cub get a little bigger. And a Settle the Wreckage here from Zach Owen.
There's a negate.
Wow, there's the negate and the handshake.
And we talked about it before, but those inexpensive counterspells against, you know, attempted haymakers like Settle the Wreckage they're really punishing cards.
All right, let's go back to our main table here. Eric Froehlich versus Seth Manfield. Pair of Servant of the Conduits currently in play. Brad Nelson remaining undefeated here at this tournament, heading into the draft portion. Rogue Refiner here for Froehlich. Seth Manfield up a game. Attune with Ether for Manfield as the players continue to develop out their boards. Attune with Ether, just such an important card. You know, you see this card. I remember when it was first previewed, you're just like, okay, whatever. Yeah. And then here it is. Like, it's so critically important to these decks.
Yeah, there are so many decks that almost couldn't exist without it. I mean, they'd probably still be around. They just wouldn't be nearly as powerful, and their mana wouldn't be as good. But these energy strategies that kind of play that core of cards that we've been seeing since they've been printed, they rely on Attune with Ether so much. And time again, we see the kind of the most impressive deck in Standard being a deck that is held together by the glue that is Attune with Ether.
Eric Froehlich will swing with the Rogue Refiner. Having access to all of your colors of mana when you need them, so very important. And Attune is, I think, one of the best ways we have right now of making that happen. Another Rogue Refiner here from Froehlich as well. Finds a hub. We'll pass back over to Manfield. And what's your thought on how Seth has kind of changed his game plan post-board here in the mirror?
Well, I think that in the mirror, it's most important to, first of all, he's definitely taking Carnage Tyrant out of his deck. That was one of his most embarrassing cards in the first game. He probably wants to be bringing in, just more inexpensive spot removal cards like a Braid. He may even want to bring in, some more versatile counter magic if he expects multiple copies of Confiscation Coup and if he wants to fight any counter wars. But in reality, you're just in this Temur Energy mirror. You're trying to make your deck as powerful as possible, especially when you know that the opponent's deck doesn't have access to a card like Scarab God.
There we see a Glory Bringer for Seth Manfield taking down a Rogue Refiner from Froehlich. Froehlich will get in with a Rogue Refiner of his own. And there you said it, Confiscation Coup on the Glory Bringer.
And with the Glory Bringer exerted, that means that Eric's not going to be able to use it the following turn either. But the fact that there is that ticking time bomb that is a Glory Bringer on the table, that's just such an unbelievably powerful play for him to spend 5 mana and deal with Seth's 5 mana threat and then also get a 5 mana threat of his own. It's just a 2-for-1 at maximum value. It's just an unbelievable card.
I think they're asking here, the judge, if Glory Bringer remains exerted after the Confiscation Coup.
Oh, it does not.
Oh, they're taking it off.
Interesting.
Seth here, Confiscation Coup of his own to get back that Glory Bringer.
Do you have no loyalty, Dragon?
Wow.
Eric would like to appeal the exert ruling.
This exert question just continuing to be relevant here as Glorybringer swaps sides of the battlefield back and forth.
Oh my goodness.
I have no idea if this Glorybringer is supposed to be exerted right now or not. Neither do our players as we, I think, wait for a ruling down there on the field. You can see top players calling for judges. Never something to be embarrassed about. Judge hand getting in there, trying to suss things out.
It's language with hands.
Yeah.
These are lands. This is my hand.
That's probably what he's saying. This is when I wish I had a little judge on speed dial. Judge phone. Doot, 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 doot.
Call into the judge center. But, to reiterate the power of Confiscation Coup, you control magic effects when you can play them for full value as 2-for-1s. They're some of the most powerful effects you can play in these types of mirror matches. Again, Seth is spending 5 mana, dealing with a 5 mana threat, and getting a 5 mana threat of his own. And it's essentially like spending 5 mana to get 2 cards and 10 mana worth of cards. So, just basically the most powerful thing he could possibly be doing for 5 mana in Standard right now with that Confiscation Coup.
2 Confiscation Coups in Seth Manfield's 75.
It's a card I've been consistently impressed with every time these energy decks choose to play some number of it. And, we're starting to see more of it in main decks. Eric actually playing 2 copies in his main deck this weekend. Post-sideboard, most players seem to be able to go up to it 2 copies. So, this is a card that we saw in the main deck from Peach Garden Oath last weekend.
Yes.
Reed Duke, Owen Turtwald, and Huey Jensen all had it in their main deck. It was an incredible answer to Scarab God, and it's just one of the very best cards you could play in a mirror match like this.
It's really interesting, too, how Confiscation Coup was kind of the next level that Scarab God was supposed to be over Temur, right?
Yes.
So people say, oh, we'll play Scarab God because that beats traditional Temur. But PGO was like, we'll get one step ahead of that and play Confiscation Coup to take your Scarab God. So interesting to me.
And, with Confiscation Coup and Essence Scatter in the deck, it really makes it so Scarab God isn't quite the unbeatable haymaker that it once was in this mirror match.
If you're coming to this tournament, JVL, this weekend, what deck are you bringing?
That's an interesting question. I've tried a lot of decks this week. I'd really love to see Mardu Vehicles do something great this weekend. I think it's
now I gotta stop and ask you
deck.
why, because for somebody like me, I'm like done with Mardu Vehicles. I don't want to see it again.
I just think that Heart of Kirin seems to match up really well against the pillars of the metagame right now, and it seems to also match up well against these token strategies that are popping up. The deck isn't quite as strong as it was because it lost Inspector, but besides that, it seems to be mostly intact, and I feel like Heart of Kirin is just one of the most powerful cards in Standard, and that it's a card that you can play for 2 mana, and if your opponent doesn't have an answer for it immediately, it just takes over the game and wins. And there's nothing like that we're currently seeing, and I don't know. I think I'd try to make it work. If I couldn't make it work, I would likely end up playing one of these Temur strategies. That's in my wheelhouse. I like a good mid-range deck.
Are you somebody who wants to play a deck that matches your play style and just kind of like what you want to be doing in a game versus just straight up what is the best deck in the field?
I think I lean toward playing the best deck.
Okay.
Yeah. But if it's close, I will go with a deck that's a more mid-range type strategy.
It looks like we have sussed out a problem here with the Exerted Glorybringer as the turn goes back to Froehlich, who attacks with his Rogue Refiner and hits with a Bristling Hydra here as a follow-up play. Glorybringer doesn't untap. Yep, there it is. Ready for action.
Yes, glory shall once again be brought to the screen for our viewers. Bristling Hydra with plenty of energy here.
Yes.
Seth only at 12.
When you're sitting on 11 energy of the Bristling Hydra, you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, it's like Carney T.
Looks like Seth here contemplating an attack with this Glorybringer, which will exert to kill Froehlich's Rogue Refiner. And we'll see if Froehlich has another Confiscation Coup so we can do this all over again.
Yeah.
And there's Carnage Tyrant, which did not get boarded out.
Oh, wow. That's surprising to me. I'm excited about that staying in the main deck. That's going to be an interesting question for me to ask Brad and Seth post-match. Be excited to bring you guys that information.
Attune with Ether here for Froehlich. His draw for the turn was Harness Lightning.
And one thing that's nice about Carnage Tyrant is it does not matter I guess it does matter if your opponent has an absurd amount of energy, but it's going to take a lot of energy from an opponent to get a Bristling Hydra over the top of a Carnage Tyrant. The other thing that's nice about Carnage Tyrant is that it can finish a game through an absurd number of Whirler Virtuoso tokens.
All right, Bristling Hydra swings in for Froehlich. 13 energy available.
And that's going to be enough to get this Bristling Hydra up to 7 toughness, 8 power. So the Carnage Tyrant could trade with it, no matter how large it is. If Seth puts the Servant in front also, then it'll force Eric to use all but one of his energy.
All right, Carnage Tyrant blocks the Bristling Hydra. And a trade. Carnage Tyrant hits the bin along with that Bristling Hydra. And a Long Tusk Cub is a follow-up play here for Froehlich, who will throw things back over to Seth Manfield. Essence Scatter in hand, by the way, for Froehlich.
If Froehlich going to be able to put that energy to good use there with the Long Tusk Cub now representing a 5/5 body, if need be.
Confiscation Coup from Manfield, number 2, targeting that Cub.
And again, a very nice 2-for-1 here. Even when you're stealing a 2-drop, the card just feels like such a powerful effect. And he's going to go up 2 energy here.
Yeah, I'm not sure what action Froehlich still has left in hand other than that Essence Scatter.
Essence Scatter is such a great reactive card, but Confiscation Coup is subverting that pretty nicely.
Harness Lightning here from Froehlich to kill his own Long Tusk Cub. So Seth cannot gain control of it.
Seth declining to attack with his Servant of the Conduit, representing a card like Essence Scatter here.
Mountain was the draw for Froehlich, who will just have to pass the turn back over to Manfield. 6 power of attackers.
And with Eric at 12 life, 12 is divisible by 6. It's only 2 turns.
Another Rogue Refiner here for Manfield is going to get scattered from Froehlich. And Whirler Virtuoso is the follow. Things not looking good here for Eric as Seth Manfield swings in for 6. Access to 5 energy as well with that Virtuoso. Rogue Refiner was the draw.
And now even if Eric has a way to get the Glorybringer off the table, if he's unable to also produce a blocker here, then he's still dead because of the token that Whirler Virtuoso would create. He's able to cast Rogue Refiner, which would be the blocker. You need to find a removal spell, and he does not.
And there is the handshake. Seth Manfield takes down this match 2-0 over Eric Froehlich. Temur energy on Temur energy there in that game. 2 slightly different builds, of course. It's always interesting to see how various versions of the same deck choose 1 or 2 different cards. Well, we'll be back with more action here from U.S. Nationals after these messages.